And we are back live for the first time in quite a while. But again, I guess it called for it. And we've got you again. And I would say, how are you doing? I know you've been making regular updates on that, but how are you feeling about the situation now?
It's one I've said the same thing a fair few times, and it's like I'm still feeling the same about it. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I'm like thrilled and happy about the fact Enzo Maresca's left, but at the same time, it's like I think we all sort of get why he's going to a bigger club. He's going to take a step up in his career. It's a huge risk for Chelsea, but I don't think it's a huge risk for him because I feel like he's in a no lose situation. So if he goes in and fails, well, everyone's expecting him to. If he goes in and does very well, then his stock goes up by tenfold.
And you've got 5 years on the contract, so either way, you're getting paid. That's
Yeah,
so again, good from a second. This is a good point. Anil, again, your thought on the situation, because again, this kind of came out of nowhere at this moment in time.
Yeah, strangely, I'm not too bothered. It's interesting seeing the fan base because you have a lot of people that were never thrilled with Enzo's style to begin with. So I think those guys are actually pretty happy. Now, you and we've been on the channel and I did like full tactical breakdowns of his style. So I don't think you're going to find someone who's more of a bigger fan of him than me. I do think he's an excellent manager, especially in a tactical setup. But we said it a few times. Like one, I felt like especially in January when the whole sort of transfer window shenanigans was going on, that it looked almost from a body language type of thing that he was already thinking, look, I'll do my job this season, but I think the relationship's been broken there, so I think he was going there. But another thing that I'll say, which I think is also relevant, is I said this to you, I think, during that really poor run that we had. And I said to you that I felt the writing was on the wall for him. And what I mean by that is if you remember the season that we finished ninth under Brendan, or was it eighth or something like that, it wasn't a disaster of a season, but you could tell that we were never going to be as good in that era as the previous season. Like it was the decline had started. Now, that might sound a bit controversial to say, but I guess what I'm saying is I felt that Enzo probably would have left the club this season anyway, regardless of what happened, if that makes sense. Now, it could be that he did a good job and kept us up. It could be that we didn't stay up, he went, some other thing. But I just kind of got the feeling that I could see already from the fans, they weren't too happy. We'd even seen cracks in it ourselves. He'd be a bit stubborn. Now, to be fair, after that, he recovered. We didn't, shit the bed, pardon my language. And, we ended up winning the title. But it kind of transpires that a certain living legend of the club might be partly responsible for that and understanding the sort of player dynamic and rallying the players to improve their performances. And whilst you can't just say it's all that, I mean, sometimes that is important. Like, if you've got any organization, sometimes even with leadership, you need the individuals themselves to sort of stand up and be counted. So I guess where I'm going with this sort of train of thought is I kind of felt like the story was going to end sooner than we thought anyway. When he first came in, what I was excited for is I was like, wow, I think we're going to get a manager who could be here for 4 or 5 years and could totally transform the club from academy level all the way to playing style. He plays this modern cutting edge football, which I'm a fan of because I think, times change a lot, right? Especially with tactical setups. And that's an edge. If you can teach your team how to play that way now, then you can start picking up points and doing things that other people can't. Like Ipswich have had a fantastic season, but one of the reasons why their story has been so successful is look at the way that they play. They're playing in a style that like the other teams aren't quite sure how to deal with it. And that's why a lot of these outdated managers have gone the way of the dodo and these new ones are coming up. And for example, with Enzo, why is it that Chelsea have made such a big deal to sign him? And I think that is one of the big reasons. They look at how successful Arteta's blend of football is. They can see that Maresca has managed to coach a championship team into be doing it. Now, for us, I think one of the big challenges was that when we, in this season, would that style even work? But the thing is, the Chelsea team, as of right now, cost £1.2 billion to put together, plus God knows what else. So they absolutely have the capability to do it, and it on paper should work. But look, I don't think we should make it so much about him because he's yesterday's news now. We should focus on us, I suppose, going forward. But look, I would say the same thing, which is that I think if we do it right, we could still find somebody that is going to be this project manager and hopefully wants to be here. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, Brendan had a similar thing as well. Like he felt it was a bit too big for the club. Now, did Enzo think he was too big, or was it just more of a case of this broken trust? I think it's more the latter, because I think he was giving it the big one for a reason. Like I think there's something there for him. But I would like to see us like get someone who is going to be here for 3, 4, 5 years, like build a legacy. Like my favorite managers in our lifetime, even though Ranieri achieved the miracle, that's not my favorite manager. I think my favorite managers were probably Martin O'Neill. That was a real era, a real legacy. Nigel Pearson, that was a real era, a legacy. It had good and bad. There was Deeney Day in that period. That sucks. But then we won the title. Then we stayed up. There was some magnificent parts of it, right? Yeah, these sort of things. And I would like to see us put, I don't know, it's funny because Rogers was here for a while, but everyone is, even though we had such high, I get that. Neil's expression is that of kind of like, nah, shaking his head. And I agree. I just think the whole way through with him, I never thought he connected with the fans, not in the way that like Martin O'Neill did, or Nigel Pearson. And, Ranieri wasn't with us for long, but he really did connect with the fans, right? Those press conferences are the stuff of legend. I mean, I just get fond memories thinking of it now. So I'd like to see someone like that come in, and maybe that's what we can move the discussion on to. But look, I will just say finally, though, I do think that the biggest problem, though, is that this season coming up, I don't think it's going to be too much fun, because I think even if Enzo would have stayed, we would need siege mentality from day one. They've talked this morning about it being between 6 and 15-point deduction, which sounds crazy because you only get 9 if you go like bankrupt. So 15 is ridiculous, but they might be trying to make an example of Leicester and be like, you can't fudge the rules. Although I think that would make a mockery given what have Man City done, right? So I think there might be some outcry, but if they give us -8 or something like that, that's really tough. This season is going to be very difficult. Last season in the Premier League was a bit weird because you had 3 awful teams, right? Which is why even 2 teams of points deductions succeeded. But it's like, we have won it with 97 points and proven in the Premier League before. Ipswich, I think, if they're keeping their manager, their never say die attitude, well, basically we're favourites for relegation probably because we're going to start on the minus points and we can't make too many transfers. And at least the 1+ point was, well, we had a good manager and a good system of play and everyone was used to it, so we could hit the ground running. Well, now not even that's going to be the case. So look, whoever gets in, we've got to really get behind whoever that manager is. I think in our minds, we've got to accept that we may well go down. But what I would like to say is I don't think we should just give up or feel sorry for ourselves. Like if I remember the last time we did the Great Escape season, we started quite well that season, but then we had like a really bad run. Things happened like Schmeichel getting injured and things like that. And there was definitely times where everyone felt sorry for ourselves, but the team pulled it together, and you're gonna need fighting spirit. That's the biggest thing, and that comes from the crowd too. And I think just recently when we got promoted, fair play to you lads, especially Ant, because I know he gives it the big one in the stands. But look at the West Brom game. That was a game that I actually think we won that game because of the crowd and Hamza Chowdhury, to be honest with you. But I felt like the crowd transmitted their energy into Hamza. Like honestly, us watching it from the sidelines, that day, even though it wasn't going our way to begin with, you could feel that they're like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to force our way through it. And I think some of our best days we've done that. So we all got to like send those positive vibes and do it that way. And, sometimes the bad things can make you stronger. I'll say again that like if we'd have got promoted the season where Deeney Day happened, I don't think we go on to win the Premier League title. So sometimes a little bit of a setback isn't the worst thing in the world. And you know what? So bizarrely, if we were to get the right person, we can talk about who that's going to be in a moment, but we could go into this season with that siege mentality. They might be like well up for it. Do you know what I mean? That's what I want. I want to see someone who's got that kind of character who turns up and is like, oh, you, turn that frown upside down. Why are you in such a mood? Come on, I heard you were good for Taoué. Come on then, lad, show me what you got. Make this defender take him for toast, get people buzzing, and you could really turn it around. So that's what I want to see. And so that's my big ass rant. But who do you lot think? Who would you like actually? Let's put it that way. Who would you like to see take charge of the club?
And I'll hand it over to you because I know you've had there's the obvious answers, and I know you've mentioned about, well, take it away. Where do you want to go with this? Because we can go in so many different directions. Because the names, I wouldn't say they're all over the place, but there's a few main contenders. Let's say.
Yeah, there's like out of the managers we've been linked to pretty much every unemployed manager across Europe, and officially Enzo Maresca is still our manager. But for me, if I could choose someone, it would be Carlos Corberán out of West Brom. I think tactically he's I think he's one of the best tacticians in the Championship. He's so adaptable. I think you can see that when West Brom are the dominant teams, there's clear patterns of play and there's a clear identity about West Brom. But he's also not afraid to set his team up to be horrible to play against, really dig their heels in. And I feel like next season we're going to need to do that at times where we aren't going to be able to play that like pretty free flowing football. We're going to have to be bastards and going to have to be a bit of an ugly team, which I think he ticks all of those boxes. And then he's also, if he comes here, he will also be taking a step up. And I think that I like in a manager that's he's as much as like we want him to do well, he's going to want himself to do well to come here and prove himself. But like he isn't just a sort of hype job in the EFL. But there's actually something about him.
Makes sense. And I think because he's, again, looking at that West Brom team, the 2 matches we played against them, they played really well in those positions. I think that
they probably should have won both those games.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
which is hilarious, but I mean they didn't deserve that. That's not what the XG said either. I think just coming on to that quickly, like I agree, and I think we should spend a lot of time talking about him. But I'll offer you some other names that are kind of interesting, or I think could have been done. So I'm surprised he wasn't linked, but I actually, if I could pick anyone, would actually go for Carlos Cuesta, who is the Arsenal assistant manager. He's only 29 years old. He was linked with the Norwich job back in January. And the reason I would have picked him is because basically he plays exactly the same style as Enzo. So if you look at the way that Arsenal play, sometimes when they're doing their attacking patterns of play, literally as the move is playing, you're like, their winger's going to run here. Their number 8's going to run into the inside channel. He's going to cut it back, and that player's going to score. And that's exactly what happened. You're like, why did you know that was going to happen? It's like, because, mate, I see this every single week. And that player is Fatawu, and that player is Ndidi, and that person that taps it in is Dewsbury Hall. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think that continuity is quite important. And I think this is something that the club have to take some accountability for, that we don't have a clear director of football. I know that on paper it's John Rudkin, but in my opinion, I think he actually fulfills more of a kind of general manager role or head of football operations. And he doesn't really, like a true director of football, they should be someone who actually is in charge of the manager and they've got succession planning. So they're like, oh, I know if Ant's going to leave. Oh, don't worry, we're going to call up Luke from Australia to come in and he's going to join instead because Ant's too fancy for us. And he's gone and joined, like, you know, the club or whatever, one of these premium YouTube channels. But we've got the next up and comer who's got a little bit, you know, he's got the equal hatred for Leeds. So we've got that continuity going. He's got the same sort of terrible jokes. We'll give it large in the stands. So we got that, you know, so we might lose the top tier one, but we got someone who's got the potential to be even better than Ant in the future to come on. That's the sort of way that I think about it. So that's maybe one choice I would go for. But I think you got to get real. In the situation we're in, you can't give someone their first ever job this job. So, you know, that was always dreamland scenario. The other one that's been mentioned is Potter. I'll be honest with you, I do like him. I don't think he'd be a terrible choice, but I do think he's quite highly overrated. I think if you look at what he's achieved in the English game, it's not much. To be fair, when he was manager of Östersunds and they got that deep run into Europe, that was extremely impressive, especially for a club with not that much resources. But he was in charge of Swansea and they didn't really do that much, didn't get to the playoffs or anything like that. In Brighton, they played it out from the back, but did they ever do a deep cup run or finish in Europe? They didn't. It was De Zerbi that did that, right?
To be fair, though, when Potter left Brighton, they were fourth.
Yeah, but I mean, great. You win your first game of the season, you could be top, right? I mean, you know.
No, but that was a decent chunk in, wasn't it? But that was like when he left.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, if you end the season after 10 games, you know, like you can't. That's not a massive achievement, is it? Do you know what I mean?
No, it's not.
Listen, as I said, I don't think he's a bad manager. I'm not saying that and I even think if we were to appoint him, I wouldn't be like rioting here. I think he's a very solid manager. He's good. He's got upward potential. But I'm just saying, I don't think he's like. To be honest with you, I think the Chelsea job, it was obviously too soon for him, and that's his issue. But if I'm being honest, I don't think Potter is as good even as Brendan Rodgers. That might sound controversial, but Brendan Rodgers has actually won trophies. He did very well with his Swansea team and then his Liverpool team and then Celtic. And with us, he won the FA Cup. It might have ended badly, but the good stuff was good. You know, Potter, he didn't with Swansea. Did they get to the playoffs? They didn't. Like, you just talked about Carlos Corberán. Carlos Corberán had Huddersfield in the playoff final, and I don't know if you saw that match, but they were basically robbed of going up. And then
But
West
yeah.
Brom, they didn't sign any players. Well, they did, but they didn't buy any players. They were all loan signings, and he still got them into the playoffs. And look at how expensive like the whole team is, the Coventry team is, and he outperformed them. So and he should have beaten us twice. So what I'm saying is I think he's got a better pedigree than Potter. Maybe the other name that I've seen. This is mental, I tell you not. But I'm a big member of the Foxes Talk forum, which is kind of an old school type of forum, and probably that will tell you who one of their most favourite choices.
Moyes.
It is
Moyes.
David Moyes. It is remarkable how many people want him. Now, to be fair, let's think through it logically. It's because they're like, look, safe pair of hands. It doesn't matter how we play. We just need to get results. He always had our number. He actually did win a European trophy with West Ham. Fact. Is that their first trophy ever, or the first time since the last time they won the European
That's
trophy?
in a long time.
Isn't it since the FA Cup that they won in like the 70s or something?
Yeah,
like
they
that?
did win something back then. I remember when they had essentially the England World Cup team. So, they had a good team at one point. So he did win a European trophy, though. And yeah, he did a good job. So look, I would hate to see him here. But I can say that if you are just thinking on paper, but that's the continuity type thing, right? He doesn't
But
play.
that's Scott Parker. That's the Scott Parker thing of this time last year.
No. I think Moyes deserves more credit than being labelled by Scott Parker.
Yeah.
Like Moyes he's always punched above his weight with the teams that he's been at. To be fair, like you look at his Everton team, like earlier on in his career.
Preston team was really good back in the day. If you remember that, it was a good team.
Say that again.
His Preston North End team was good.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing being with Moyes, I think he deserves a lot more credit than he gets for his time at West Ham. He got them European football 3 years back to back, winning the Conference League, and it's like I want us to have a manager that's going to sort of be forward thinking, but as a short term option, I wouldn't be against David Moyes because I do think he keeps us up. I do think like it wouldn't be particularly exciting at times. It might be a bit of a painful watch. But having said that, do you remember when we beat Liverpool a couple of years ago where we literally had 2 shots all game and like those kind of shithouse victories are 10 times more satisfying. Like at times,
But they only come once every 12 games.
Yeah. But at times they can be so satisfying compared to like.
Do you think this squad is set up though for David Moyes? Because what I ask you is, David Moyes, he needs like a brickhouse striker up front, like Mikel Antonio or a Marouane Fellaini. I know he wasn't a striker, but he used him as such. And he needs like someone who's audacious at set pieces. Like that's what he's proud.
We need another Souček.
Yeah, sorry, but is the squad set up for anyone? Because we don't have a striker at this point. So whoever comes in.
To be fair, and you got me there. That's a good counter argument. To be fair, yeah.
But if
it's like
the one kind of Enzo manager, it's kind of that same ilk.
Yeah, my thing is, I'm not saying David Moyes is my my answer or anything like that, but I wouldn't be against it as much as some people are. But the thing that I would be interested to see with David Moyes, you likes of Harry Souttar. I think he would absolutely love Harry Souttar, and it's like players that we already think are out the door. Moyes would have a very different opinion than, say, someone like Carlos Corberán or Graham Potter on which players are of value to him and are useful to him.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's a really well put together argument, and I think it is only fair to like talk it through with things like that, because you're right, and like I say, even though I don't agree with that and I find it quite funny, actually, if you think through it logically, there's quite sound thinking there to kind of take him. But look, I think we should talk about the Kopmeister because he's the current bookie's favourite. What I will say of him, what I think is interesting, is that this time last year, he was actually kind of being talked about. And I actually think even this time last year, he would not have been an awful appointment. I definitely think we could have done better. But I don't think he was like a bad one even then, because even before this season, he'd done a good job with Huddersfield before taking over West Brom. So, I don't know how much you know about him, but he worked under Bielsa. He also spent a lot of time in Spain working under Lilo, who's the current Man City number 2. So you got to keep track of these Man City number 2s because it turns out that they are becoming the number 1s. The crazy thing is that Bayern Munich are going to have Vincent Kompany, who played under Guardiola. Arsenal, who only finished second by a couple of points, we've got Arteta, who was the number 2. And now Maresca, who is the Chelsea number one, was also his number two. So this guy, I think, is now 54 years old. But I think it's worth keeping an eye on him because you never know. I mean, he might fancy a top club himself, right?
You know
You've got
what's
Ten Hag, and then you've got Xavi as well. So it's not just one or two. There's so many that are coming out of this as
Mate,
well.
he's going to go down as the best manager ever. There's no doubt about
you look
it.
at the big six in England. 4 of them are Pep disciples.
Yeah.
That in itself is massive because United have got Ten Hag. Obviously, you've got Pep himself, Arteta, and now obviously Maresca going to Chelsea. And Ange Postecoglou, whilst he's not a
City group though, he was part of the City group.
he was part of the City group, and a lot of his philosophy and a lot of his ideas are based around Pep Guardiola's philosophy and ideas.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Neil, I don't know if you want to bring up the articles then. I mean, tactical stuff is good, but I think if I had to boil it down to like what their main difference is, so Corberan actually does play quite similar in the sense that like when they're in possession, they quite often go to the 3-2-5 shape as well. If you scroll down, actually, I think there's one where there's like an animated GIF where you actually see like the formation changing mid-game. I'm not sure if it's on this article or not.
Yeah.
No, keep going down. Keep going down.
This is get us copyrighted.
They have two. Keep going. There's quite an in-depth article. Let me tell you. Okay, that's worth looking at though. The low block there. So I think up one. Go up just a little bit, please. Yeah, here we go. So I mean, this is like back to Ranieri, right? When we played under Ranieri, what he was expert at doing is he compressed the game into this tiny amount of space. I remember sitting there in the stands thinking, wow, there's all this blade of grass and the entire game is being played within this 20-yard space. You can literally measure the distance between Wes Morgan and Jamie Vardy at the time on the team. But that's really impactful because when you have a block that's this deep, it's extremely difficult to maneuver your way around there. So even for us, why did we struggle against West Brom? Because even if you're good at playing in between spaces, there ain't no space there, right? And this is something that he's good at. That's why his teams are defensively good. So it's not that he's a defensive manager. It's more that he is very good at drilling those instructions to make it tough for people to break down. And you mentioned it near the top of the show. I totally agree with you that Corberan, one of the reasons why he's managed to overperform with both Huddersfield and West Brom is he's made them hard to beat, right? And that's something you can do with any team just by drilling, doing a lot of practice on the training ground and being disciplined. And you're going to get a lot of points off doing that, especially if your team then has the ability to pack a threat on, not just on the break, but when they're in possession. So if you want to keep moving down, then the rest of his kind of system. So he does have that 3-2-5 shape, but we at the moment use the inverted fullback, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of using inverted fullback, he does something which McKenna does as well, actually, where he has 2 sitting midfielders at all times, actually. But what happens is in the kind of 4-3-3, the fullback, when they're in possession, the fullback actually becomes a winger, if that makes sense. So you've got the same 3-2-5 shape, but currently the way that it would work is that our fullback goes into defensive midfield, right? That's what Ricardo does. But instead, with their system, they become like another overload. So that's like the biggest difference. And so I guess the biggest question mark for our team is what he would do with Ricardo Pereira. So, you know, I suppose the good news with Ricardo is if you need to have a raiding fullback, he's also pretty good at doing that, right? But then who's the other sitting midfielder? Would that mean that he would use Hamza and Winks as the sitters? Would he completely just change Ricardo and say, you know what, Ricardo, you're no longer a raider and you're just going to be a sitting midfielder, which I think there's not a bad way of saying that because JJ's not bad at raiding either, right? You could do that. There's Victor Christiansen come back in and he can be the raiding fullback like he always wanted to be. I expect not, but just to call it out with him, he's at Bologna, but Bologna's coach has gone to Juventus. It's Motta. And so he's on loan. So does the new Bologna manager want Christiansen? He's an expensive signing, you know. And I think Juventus have already got a good left-back option. So I think that's like an issue there. So who knows, though, because I would say, like, if you were the manager coming into Leicester right now, do you go for entirely new tactics? Or do you just go, I could just use the tactics that were already working and tweak them a little bit?
I don't know. It's like, we had that with Shakespeare, didn't we? Where he just tried to tweak it slightly. I think you've got to put your own stamp on the squad because if you're going to do what someone else's ideas are, you're only going to go so far. You might get that managerial bounce, but you've got to go in with your own philosophies and own ideas. And I think someone like Carlos Corberan will be so sort of confident and believe in his own ideas so much that he wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, and that probably makes sense. But look, I'm just saying. I mean, you've got because the thing is why this is quite scary for all of us, and why people are feeling down is probably with Enzo. They've probably already discussed like here's the 4 or 5 positions that we need this season. They've got their number one targets, and they're probably all doing deals. Now it's like, well, hang on a minute. You need to have this left-sided centre back that can also play as a kind of attacking overloaded player, and the new manager's like, nah, I don't need that. I need you to get me this type of player instead. So that's a bit of it. And then the problem is that then the scouting team are like, shit, hang on a minute. If you need that type of player, we haven't even done the research. They'd be like, Neil, pull a late one. You can't go home until you found Carlos Corberan, 3 different number 10s that can also drop into a. He doesn't play like that, by the way, but I'm just making it up. Right, yeah.
And there's that, but there's also Yannick Vestergaard's going, crap, I was going to sign a contract here, and I was going to play this kind of football. I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm going to be released. So
the thing is, it's like even if that contract's on the table for him, and say hypothetically, because we don't know that he could have already signed it, and that could just be kept quiet. The new manager might come in and think, I absolutely want nothing to do with him, and it's like, let's be honest, there's a very real possibility because like this is Vestergaard's 3rd manager at Leicester.
That's why you need a director of football, because the director of football would then interview the potential candidates, and they'd be like, here's the squad. Like, to be fair, I hate to say it, but it sounds like this is what Chelsea did. Chelsea spoke to their managers, like, here's our squad. How would they utilize him? And Enzo's probably got, oh, you've got an Enzo playing. Well, I'm an Enzo manager. Ha, ha, ha. I'll make him work, sort of thing. But no, I'm pretty sure he's gone and said, I'll use Enzo as like the Harry Winks position or something, and I'll turn Casado into a box-to-box 8 and yada yada. And they've probably got the data to back it up. And he goes, look what I did with Wilfred and Diddy. Wait till I make a £110 million player look like that. And they've probably gone, ooh, this sounds good. You're hired, sort of thing. That could well happen. So that might be something that we look at. But I agree with you, Anne. That is the big worry, is that we've ended up now with a squad that isn't suitable and we have to change it. But look, I think the good news... I'll let you talk, yeah.
I was going to say, have you seen who we've just been linked to?
Who?
Steve Cooper.
Yeah, some people have mentioned that because he's in the area, but I don't particularly rate him. But
I don't think he's the manager that we need right now. And I don't think if we've genuinely got long-term ambitions, he's not the guy.
But
he only really
depends on if he's, the thing is that he's the best possible price because it's 0. And it depends how tight we are for it. I wouldn't be the biggest fan of him. Obviously, there's the Forest connection. But I could see him getting it, to be honest with you. He's got Premier League experience. He kept his team up. He was good at working in some unusual circumstances. Sure, they're unusual circumstances where they signed 36 players, but that's still a bit unusual, right? You still got to show a bit of managerial nous to be able to manage that situation. So we'll kind of see there. But yeah, I think it's going to be... Look, I think they'll at least make an offer for Corberan unless their new owners keep him. Just because the way that they play is they also play that style where they try to play their way out of trouble. They won't just hoof it. So why I think he'd actually be pretty good, again, you mentioned it near the top of the show, Anne, is that I guess in an ideal world, you want someone who isn't going to be so stubborn that they know in some games you need to defend and play the patient game, but also isn't going to completely throw away the philosophy of trying to play out from the back and keep the ball and use some of our strengths in terms of playing through the gaps and make opportunities that way. So I actually think on paper, he's ticks a lot of boxes there. He's 41 years old, so I think he's actually younger than Enzo. That's kind of surprising. He's got a lot of experience. He's been at 2 English clubs, done well with both of them. He had a bad spell at Olympiacos, but this is Olympiacos, a team that have had 7 managers in 2 years, although they are in the Conference League final, to be fair. So I guess a broken clock is right twice a day, as they say. So that's what there. It's a Nottingham Forest owner, by the way, that was in charge there. He was only in charge for 11 games, and I believe he fell out with the owners before even a ball was kicked. So, classic. They were probably trying to force about 500 players down his throat, like what's on there. I think he plays good football. I think he knows how to set up defensively. I've definitely seen him change his tactics. So he's not just I've only got a plan A type of thing. He's like, I actually saw as well that, a lot of people say that they were disappointing against Southampton in the second leg playoff. But I've seen his interview afterwards, and he said some pretty interesting things. He was saying, he goes, that I'm really disappointed. They were the better team. They deserved to go through. So he didn't make any excuses. He said where we made the mistakes is that, we knew that we had to defend a little bit because we were playing away to them, but we lacked bravery and we never made any opportunities, which is true. Basically what I liked about it was quite a refreshing analysis. Like, how Brendan, whenever we'd lose, he's like, I thought you were tremendous, even though we got battered like 4-0.
It was 22 degrees.
Yeah, Danny Ward's some keeper, isn't he? Oh, he certainly is some keeper, just not a very good one. So that I think is nice to see. So yeah, that's my take on it anyway.
And it just depends on the players. Again, the names that we're linked with, which again you mentioned, we've gone through Potter, we've gone through Moyes, we've gone through obviously Corbrand, which we'll probably come back onto in a second. Mark Robbins is in that list as well, which again I can't really see happening. Another one, Marty Cifuentes from Sheffield Wednesday. I think he did really well, but my God, that is beyond a jump.
The thing is,
It's an unbelievable
Cifuentes,
risk.
like because our Leeds friend in the chat absolutely loves him, because when Leeds went to Loftus Road and got beaten 4-0, like that was an absolute masterclass. And under Gareth Ainsworth, was it at the start of the season, QPR looked absolutely dead and buried.
They
But
beat
if we
us
talk,
3-0, by the way, just throw that out there, or 2-1, whatever it was. He done them.
Yeah.
He masterclass last as well.
he did, but unfortunately for one of us, for one of them it mattered, for the others it didn't. But
Go on, Anne.
for like we're saying, Carlos Corberan's a step up. Cifuentes is like 4 steps up from QPR to Leicester right now.
Yeah. And you can't be playing around. That's probably why. And even more steps up than that was going for that. I forgot his name is now. I've got Cifuentes in my head. Cuesta is another kind of, again, the amount step up going from
Zero experience there. I mean, admittedly, they're doing well right now, but it's a massive leap of faith. I know the other one that was linked was Danny Roll of Sheffield Wednesday, but I think he signed a new contract there. But he did. I mean, he gets slept on, right? McKenna was clearly the best manager in the Championship last year. But when he came under Wednesday, they had lost, I think, 10 games out of 13. They only had 1 point, and they'd made the worst start in Championship history. And yet he saved them from relegation. That is an absolutely incredible job that he's done there. So, and the way that they played football as well, he completely changed them. They saw against, when we played them, like they were really up for it. They got the draw against us in one of the games. So he's quite impressive too in terms of do it. But yeah, I think you need like a little bit of experience. And I think, yeah, like I said, I think you want to have someone who, because here's the thing with Corbrand, it is a step up, but I would say if you look at his CV, he would be the sort of manager that would be in line, I think, with this type of job regardless. Like, he's splitting in between those. Like, he should either be at a team that's competing to go up in the Championship or a team that's looking to survive in the Premier League. He's at that level, I think, in his career. He deserves that kind of opportunity, and he almost did it with West Brom there. So I think it's about the right thing. Now, some people would say that that's not ambitious enough, right? Where are like the European names? Like I've seen like Niko Kovac being linked, and some people saying, what about Xavi? He's just left Barcelona and things like this. And
Pochettino can come. Just swap managers.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's not even the worst shout that I've heard today. I heard that Zidane's out of work, so like some of the shouts I've heard, just like
maybe he can play as that striker that we need up front.
It's like sometimes you just think, oh, just please I just need to come off Facebook and I just need to come off Twitter. Like it is painful, but one of the
What's all the Zidane hate? That's what I want to know. What has Zidane done to Ant to hurt him personally? No, I joke.
Well, he's won the Champions League, but has he ever kept a team up in the Premier League's the question.
Exactly.
And it's just interesting because ideally, I think coming back to even Corbrand, this needs to be sorted relatively soon because this is the first gear that we got into.
I think it'll be done by the weekend. I honestly do think that. To be fair to them, they did it last year as well. I suppose maybe it'll go a week longer, but I think they'll know it because they know themselves that if they don't, they're absolutely screwed because they can't even bring any players in. That person's got to come in. The only thing is I do feel sorry for whoever does it because you've got to make... See, unlike Ranieri, when he came in, he didn't really have to make that many decisions. I know there were some players that had already been signed, and specifically they were Fuchs and Okazaki had already been pre-agreed to be signed for that season. And then he wanted to he only actually brought Kante in because Steve Walsh recommended him. So that was an interesting one. But otherwise, the team was set. But here, as you say, you've already got these players out of contract. So you're going to have to you don't even get a training session. That's really harsh. Because how do you know? They could be, what happened last year is Enzo saw the way that some of the people played. It's like, Ricky P, do you want to be an inverted fullback? Wilf, I'm going to play you as an 8. And those decisions were inspired, or Yannick got made into that player. So you're going to have to work very quickly around the clock in order to do that. And yeah, I do feel sorry for them. And because, yeah, that's the one thing I was going to say is the last time that we had a manager who sort of came in when the previous one didn't really deserve to go, it didn't turn out too badly for us. That was actually in the 15-16 season. I don't know if you remember that one. It wasn't that eventful in terms of Leicester City history. We did win the trophy. It was just the Premier League, just a small one. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think that's going to happen again. But sometimes, weirdly enough, it can work for you.
You see, even in that season, people go, he didn't change too much. I don't think he did, but I remember at the back end of the season, we were playing a 3-5-2. We played, so we going for a 3-5-2 to a 4-4-2, I think quite a drastic change. But he looked at the players he got and he went, right, certain players are working in certain positions. And I was really excited to see how we were going to set up the first game of the season. And it went pretty well, apart from defensive errors at times. But
and then that felt like it was more we were drunk making those mistakes rather than, because we were like 4-0 up at some at one point where we were 3-0 up and then we let them back into it. But it was never going to, that was it. Yeah,
no, I'm with you. I think even coming back to because reason why I'm coming back to Corberan as well, because of the things that you played. You mentioned the low block. That's actually how Ten Hag managed to beat Man City in the final. So knowing that way is coming up, and to be fair, that's nearly how they beat us twice.
Yeah.
Because they played a very similar way. They exposed space and then they hit us on the counter. What I like from reading it and just from analysing, even the games that I watched about West Brom, we take our time and we looked for the perfect pass and then we go. There's, the people that shout forward.
Yeah.
They will be happy because it's constant. They are constantly going at it, but they're coming back and they're running forward and they're closing from the front. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
They're more like Ipswich. They play that style as well. So they go for a faster vertical transition, they call it. That's why, again, I'm saying it. That we defended Enzo a lot and we liked him, but for sure, there were definitely some games. To be honest with you, that last game of the season was a good example. Forget the scoreline. In the first half, I think the half ended, and I actually couldn't tell you anything that happened in that half. Was there even a game? Some passes were made, and that's all I can remember. They might have been hung over, but sometimes his style was like that. I don't think the difference is though is that when you play that kind of more chaotic style, it does open you up a bit. But then that's why he does. By the way, I know you call it like a low block, but I think I'd say it's more just a compressed block rather than a low block, if that makes sense. Because that kind of implies that all we're going to do is sit back of two backs of four.
Yeah.
That's not what he's going to do. If they press the game as well, it's just that a certain phase of the game, they will retreat into a shape that just makes it extremely difficult. So that, I still think Arsenal and Man City are probably going to whop us because they've got the players to work through it. But as you said in the final even, it's pretty difficult to get when there's no space to get through.
But the things, my mate Brad, who's a Huddersfield fan, I have on my channel a decent amount. He says that it's like, as much as you look at sort of the ideas and what Corberan's done at West Brom, it's always that he works to the strengths of the squad. It's not he's got a set way of playing and that's it. It's like he will work to the strengths of the squad. If he thinks that he's got the players that should be sort of counter-attacking and really sort of that's going to play to the strengths of their squad, he will do it. If he thinks that it's the slow build-up play and possession, if that is the strengths of their squad, he will do it. So I like that about him. And also, going back old school, I love the fact that West Brom have long throws from either side of a pitch.
Yeah. They're chaos, aren't they? Yeah.
Absolutely. Imagine that. Long throws either side of a pitch. Harry Suter in the box. Oh, beautiful.
Bring in Tony Pulis.
That's why I think, though, that I think our fans will prefer this manager. That's my honest opinion. I think that slightly more direct and pragmatic style at times, whilst retaining the elements, will work. Because I think the best of Enzo Ball was absolutely fabulous to watch. But the thing is that you could watch for 90 minutes and see that 3 times during the game. to be fair, it still cut them apart completely, and it was a beautiful goal. Whereas I think with someone like Corberan, there'll be over the course of the season less of those absolute champagne 10 out of 10 moments, but there'll be a lot of 7 or 8 out of 10 moments where you like it or good old. Because to be honest with you, I have to say, like the last team that got promoted from the Championship was the Pearson one, and personally, I think that team was better than the current team we've got, even though this current team's got better players. And the reason why is that that team was way more physical. You had like Vasilevsky, Morgan, Nugent to some degree. You know, like we basically were like, "Do you know what? This is a battle and we're going to beat you. We want it more than you. We got aggression. Aggression was in that team. That's how they kind of did it and beat them that way. And yeah, a lot of times we'd have games and it'd be like a 4-2 or something like that. It'd be like a kind of slugfest sort of thing. It's like, yeah, you're going to get a few punches on us, but we're going to knock you out. And that sort of style worked for us. And I don't know, because he still keeps it pretty compact, but I think there'll be more of that element. And I think our fans would prefer that. And like I said, I think it's just very important that the crowd gets on side. Like, of course, the worst possible thing is we start the season and we start losing 3, 4, 5 games. And then because we got -6 points, we very quickly find ourselves like we're like, I don't know, 18 points off safety for 10 games. And you're just thinking, oh, God. I mean, at this point in time, you might as well just select the team by throwing darts at a dartboard, right? Or just fan competition of the week. Hey, you, Neil, congratulations. You get to pick the Leicester lineup this week and just let people have fun. The good case would be if somehow the manager can start getting a few points on the board early. You get the fighting spirit, the crowd get into it. You know, it'd be, the most interesting fixture is going to be us against Chelsea, won't it?
Yeah, it's going to be a firing match, that one.
Regardless, if we shit house it or whatever, that would really get the blood pumping.
And I think Corberan, especially since he has a little bit of bit in his teeth, going, we could have beat you twice, and we could have, and a little bit go, I know how to play against you, Enzo, and I know the formation. Even when you've got a better squad, here's how I can do it. I keep coming back to him because again, I've just seen that link that Steve Cooper's one consideration. Not that he's going to get it, but again, which makes sense. He's under consideration.
Don't jinx it. Do not jinx it.
Fine, he's under consideration. Is that it? Is that okay?
That is better. And it's I say don't jinx it. I don't want him now, but if he comes in, I think we all get behind him. And like,
who would you rather have, Moyes or Cooper?
Moyes, every day of the week, every single day of the week. Moyes has got.
You haven't got the
Moyes
players
is so
for Moyes,
disrespected. He got Europe 3 times in a row with West Ham.
Yeah, but I remember he had time to work on that team. Although, to be fair, he came in for Pellegrini when their team looked pretty bad.
They were 18th when they came in.
Yeah. I personally would prefer Cooper over Moyes, but I mean, to each their own, I suppose.
Cooper fits the system better.
Does he?
I think so. With what the players that we've currently got, not obviously the Enzo way, but what compared to 4-4-2 counter-attacking?
Moyes doesn't just play 4-4-2.
No, he was going 4-3-3 to be fair to him, and he did very well with Jared Bowen. But he doesn't particularly like possession, we can say that much.
No, but at the same time, as I've said, I wouldn't want Moyes as a long-term thing. As a short-term appointment, it's like, I think there's more players that suit Moyes' football than our fans would like to admit that we've got. But
I don't. Moyes, I treats very similarly to how we saw Scott Parker last year, where it's a method of staying up, not a method for the future. They took one risk, and they've sunk a lot of money and time and effort into getting that right. But if we're going to change it that drastically in such a short amount of time, that would just scream of desperation and also lack of ambition, in my opinion.
Well, aren't we desperate at the moment? Like,
he can't fault him. Look, I would say again though, I feel why again Corberan is most likely is because if we were to get relegated, he's proven in the Championship. So again, I kind of think it through. Although to be fair, you could say that of Steve Cooper, didn't he? He got him promoted with Forest, I hate to say. So maybe that's in his plus point. But yeah, I think look, let's try and be logical here. What do you want? You want somebody who can take the strengths of the current squad and kind of maintain it. So, you know, being able to be good under possession, playing out of pressure. You probably want someone who does that because then you don't have to rip it up completely. You want somebody who's got some experience managing in English football. Ideally, you want someone who's good at working in challenging circumstances. You want somebody who isn't going to be too controversial, I suppose, in terms of managing from top down because they're not going to get much of what they want. You want someone who, worst case scenario, could bring you up from the championship if need be. I guess these are sort of things that you're looking for, right, on paper in terms of doing it. What else would you want?
I think you want defensive solidity,
Okay,
especially going into next season, and that's something that with a high risk, high reward system you can't get away with, as you were mentioning. So you can afford that, but in
You
terms of
don't
playing
want
the
an
game,
dream maker type, is what you're saying. You don't want someone like because the thing is, I don't know about what did you guys make of Vincent Company? I feel pretty sorry for Burnley fan because for Vincent Company, he stuck to his style and played it the entire way through the season, and he's ended up going to Bayern Munich. Wow, what happened to Burnley? They've got relegated. Whereas if they'd have just been like, hey, why don't we just go back to 4-4-2, get it forwards, fight, battle, attrition, who knows? Maybe they would have stayed up. So
But
doesn't that kind of suck? And that's why I come back to Enzo, because I have a suspicion that he might have done something similar to that as well. He might have been like, -6 points, we're probably going to go down anyway. So I might as well just show that if there's
stock.
only 2 games of the 38 where we play amazing, I'll still get a top job. I don't know. Look, I don't want to speak. Who can say? We don't know what that timeline is going to look like now. But yeah, I think I'd rather have a manager, as Ant was saying, who's more like they want to show how good they are. That's maybe why I'm a bit scared more of the Moyes, less with Cooper in the sense that is it just a payday? Are they just the equivalent of the person like the? Although to be fair to Sean Dyche, like he's not available. But if he had been available, I would probably say that like his football Olympic, he's well due a job where he actually has some resources. He's basically works at all these clubs where they give him, a packet of Walker's crisps if he's lucky as his transfer budget. You know, that I feel a little bit sorry for Corberan actually. He must be like, yes, I finally got a good job. How much do I get to spend? But yes, about that. We've got a transfer budget of
It's
0.
later. It's coming later. Just sort the FFP out. It's coming later.
Yeah.
it's going to be one of those. It's like, ask me that in 5 minutes. Ask me that in 10 minutes. Let's do this now. Ask me about that later. We'll get onto it later.
What
But
one of the advantages of though with us playing this style is the position. Well, with Enzo leaving, one of the main positions we are kind of out is the number 8 position. Dennis Pratt's going to leave. Eunice has gone back. Kindredby Hall's up in the air, but he could potentially stay. Wilfred
Well,
Ndidi's out of
in
contract.
the core brand system, you might only need one number 8 because the winger comes inside and the other one makes an additional winger. So it might be less of an impact. I don't know. I don't know if
Like
you will
that.
want to do that. Yes, this is the one that I was looking for. Right, exactly.
So it comes round again. Still
Yeah.
trying to understand it. And then what? The full back, the wing back, the left back goes to the right wing, and then
Ipswich do something very similar where Townsend there for Ipswich would be Leif Davis, and that's why he was so crazy good in the championship.
okay.
But it's because he wasn't defending. He basically, as soon as they got on the ball, he was attacking full forwards. But yeah, if you look here with Moat and Yokushlu there, in the end they got actually Jan Mvia came in January who made a big difference to them. But they always have 2 people that sit in general, and then you're getting there. So there, if you look at it, if we were to play exactly that, actually it would be Mavadidi who's on that side, who's kind of cutting in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then how you use the strikers and things like that. And then what you can see there, though, is in that 4 in the middle, you've got a box midfield. So again, it's quite similar. So you're trying to make the numerical superiority in the middle and pass it round and use that to facilitate it. And you've got, the 9 and the 8 basically has become a 10 in this case kind of thing more, right? And you're looking more for that way. So do you know the other nice thing is you get a little bit more width. Sometimes we were a bit guilty of playing it too centrally, even though we did use wingers. Do you remember there were some games where we never really used them? We were just trying to go down the middle of the
Stick them
whole
out
time.
wide.
Yeah, as you said, there's just a bit more get it forwards in this kind of system, but there's good and bad for that. Like, I mean, to be fair, if you look at again the last game of the season, that second goal we conceded to Sammy Schmodix, it's because the entire team pushed up. We were trying to get it forwards, and then on the transition, we were just completely dead. So that's the balancing act of a manager, right? It's like, sure, actually people do want to attack, but it's like if you attack, you make it more likely that you're going to concede, right? And the scary thing is, look what happened. Sheffield United, they conceded, 107 goals? That's ludicrous, right? Burnley, who got more points than us, by the way, their defensive record was pretty awful, and they spent 100 million. Now, listen, I think they signed some poor players and they actually lost some of their better ones, but I think we've got to face the reality. Like, do you know the season we did get relegated? I think the thing that really kind of sent alarm bells for me early on the season, it wasn't just that we were losing, but I was like, the quality of the league has definitely gone up. Like, because Forest bought so many players, you were like, I mean, I hate to say it, but is their squad stronger than us? Maybe it's a bit mental because they've got too many players, but they have got some, So if you sign 30 players, they're probably going to be 5 or 6 actually good ones in it. And they signed people like Ibrahim Sangare and people like that. So they had some good signings there. Like Brentford were good that season. Have you seen Palace recently? All of a sudden, they're looking like
Glasner's looking.
Ollie
Speaking
Glasner.
of Palace, I think he was in the. I think Ali's in the chat already, going free and did he?
Do you know,
Shout out.
Ironically, you probably will be getting NDD on a free.
Yeah, linked to Atletico Madrid and DD.
Apparently, they turned him down.
Oh, really? Okay.
Apparently, it wasn't Atletico wanting Ndidi. It was Ndidi wanting Atletico and
Okay.
trying to put himself there.
Is it like me wanting a Lamborghini?
Yeah. Hey, you can't fault it.
Yeah, why not? But in terms, I'm interested to see what happens. But again, it has to get sorted, and then we can kind of look into it. But I feel after I was talking with you both, I think I feel a lot better because again, I was a bit more doom and gloom, or it's all going the wrong way. But I think I was I was still in love with Enzo. I can't lie. But mentioning some things like again the Blackburn result, thinking about Preston, how easy that was to get not Preston, Plymouth, and how easy it was to get a result and things like that. There are some downsides that aren't as obvious, and that one way of playing, if we have a manager that changes it up, that can play in a different way, it will make things a lot better because even Pep Guardiola has changed up his squad quite drastically in the players he's come in. So sticking to that one formation for that period of time, I think this season you've been able to find out, and if you're playing that kind of gung-ho style, especially defensively, you will be caught out. And there's not many teams that will sit back on the counter, but there'll be teams that will figure you out quite easily, especially with that box midfield, or if you play one player steps out of position, as we found out against Blackburn.
Yeah, look, I do think that. I mean, it was always going to be interesting this season that it could work to our advantage that this time round everyone's going to come to attack us, and that's so much easier. Like, I think people forget, like, you take it for granted that on paper it should be so easy to beat a team 20 places below you in the championship. But if they're literally turning up and they just are like, a point for them is a great result, and they completely park the bus, it's challenging to beat teams like that. All teams we're going to play are going to be leaving spaces open there. We don't know 100% if Fatau has signed yet. I've heard he has, actually. I heard that deal has been done until 2028. But, if we have him and Mavadidi, regardless of who the striker is, we've got real threat on the counter-attack. So that's already given us, I think, promise in terms of what we could do it. We've got a decently experienced midfield. But, yeah, look, I think maybe we can even wrap it up with this. But it's like the most important steps now, that you said it there, Neil, is that we got to get the next person in really quickly. I think the worst possible thing we can have is that this drags until like July or something like that. Then we're going to be absolutely cooked because the morale, I just wonder what the morale is like in the team right now. You need whoever it is to come in, and their first 20 minutes even is going to be absolutely pivotal. You've got to like win them over immediately. And infuse that personality, like we're here and we're going to do it. Also, I don't know when the points deduction's even going to get announced. That could work against us as well, right? What if they take all the way until like a week before the season starts and they say, oh yeah, by the way, lads, it's -10, there you go. That's brutal. If it's like, what would you say if it was -8 points? What would be your gut feeling if it's -8 points? Do we stay up?
It's
Spend
doable.
Spend a bit more. We might.
Even on -8 points, you think is doable?
Yeah,
Potentially.
Wow. Okay. I'm not sure.
I think 12 is where it becomes undoable. I think you become massive underdogs.
Yeah.
But I still don't think it's impossible.
Yeah.
But Neil, share the screen. If that's what's happened,
I'm not sharing the screen. If it's a picture of Sam Allardyce, and I'm not sharing the screen because that is
Listen,
comes
Liv,
in. What?
you know, Sam Allardyce has got the best winning percentage of any England manager in history, 100%.
Yeah, 1-0 against something or other from a corner. I swear it was as well. It was like
In the
the most-
93rd minute.
4-4-2. Get it forward up to the big man. None of this tippy-tappy bollocks. Let's get it sorted.
You know,
and
I
that's
think that's a bit unfair on Big Sam. Because I think
Yes, Chris.
that was a while ago as well. So he didn't just go.
do you not remember
That
that team Big Sam had that had Yuri Djorkaeff and JJ Okocha in it?
Is that Bolton team was like that was like prime Big Sam, wasn't it?
It had Fernando
JJ
Guerrero
Okocha,
in
yeah.
it even. It was crazy how what quality they had in it. I think they finished 5th or something. I don't think that team played as long ball as people think they did.
No, it's more his days sort of West Brom and those kind of teams, and that's where he gets that sort of reputation. Because wasn't it like that was proper like long balls into the box, everyone forward for corners, and if it wasn't a corner or a set piece, then you don't get more than one man in the box.
Yeah. I think if you look at the league now, the managers that actually play more of that defensive style, I would say. So it's funny because they got rid of David Moyes, but I would say that Lopetegui, who comes in, is basically the Spanish David Moyes. If you look at the way that he plays, to be fair, it's not just like hoof it long, but they are quite defensive, their setup. Nuno from Forest, he likes to park that bus.
What about Unai Emery though? He's not. He can be as defensively stubborn as any manager in the world.
I mean, he's a great manager. You've got to say what an amazing job he's done. I mean, he's just good. At the end of the day, he's won, 3 European competitions. You know, even winning one's impressive. If you win 3, it's not a fluke, is it? And he's just got them to the Champions League. The guy's a good manager. So I hate it.
good.
Because then about Juve is like Tielemans, well, yeah, he's not going to get Champions League, and he just went and did it.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe, you know, there was a crossroads. Imagine if we'd have sat Brendan Rodgers and brought in Unai Emery ourselves. That would be a nice timeline to be part of.
I'm with you, and I think even like coming into this season, there's kind of the Premier League is naturally broke up into little segments, as we can see here. There's kind of your cannon fodder, which is kind of the people that got relegated. Then there's just above the relegation zone, I'd say, the next 3 teams. This, I think, is the area that we'll be looking into fight. So the Nottingham, Brentford, and Everton's. This is who we need to try and get that. Then eventually, as we can move up, then you've got Wolves, probably to about Crystal Palace, maybe even like West Ham.
You know, Neil, every team that's on your screen right now, I would fancy us to get something from that game.
If we have caught, or just in general, regardless who we get in, or just
no, on the screen, none of those teams would scare me, and I think that's important. Do you know what I mean? It's like, say, I mean, obviously there are some teams in this division. Like, do I think we're going to get any points out of Arsenal next season? Not really.
No,
do I think we're going to get any points out of Man City next season? Not really.
Moisey did. Sorry, I'll leave.
Yeah, we also got battered 6-0 by Manchester United.
Moyes beat Arsenal one game and then a month later lost 5-0 to them. But he did get a point, or did he beat Arsenal actually?
He did. That's what cost it. No, to be fair to you, Anne, that is true. If we had David Moyes in charge, I think, and that's why Anne said he's more confident of us staying up if David Moyes stays in charge. That there are potentially more games, but in this theoretical, it's going to be, let's say, Corberan or Potterview, Chelsea again. I think we could get points from them. Keep scrolling up. Who's the next team who's bobbing? Do you know what? Funny enough, I'm not sure we get points against Villa that Anne mentioned. Spurs, I think we could get something. They play quite open. Villa, I think their manager's good, and I think that he wouldn't be afraid to do something to counter our strengths. Liverpool's an unknown because they got a new manager coming in. It'd be interesting to see how they do, but I've got a feeling that they might slip again, to be honest with you. Chelsea, I mean, that's going to be the spicy one, isn't it? And
you just know that's going to be our opening game of the season. You can see Sky putting that as a Friday night kickoff.
I kind of hope it is, to be honest with you. Why not? Start when it's fresh.
That is going to be raw. We thought Coventry at home was going to be. This is going to be another level if that's Chelsea. And if I was the people running the Premier League, and I'd put that on telly and make sure everybody's that, because that would make people watch it. Especially because there's a lot of hate towards Chelsea with what they're doing as well. So there'll be a lot of people on.
But you know, the funny thing is though, is that like Chelsea fans don't even want Enzo Maresca. So it's one of these really odd ones where I know that it'll be like a lot of beef. We'll have a lot of invested interest in it. But honestly, for them, I mean, they're just not even bothered. Like, not in even an arrogant way, but fair play to them. You would be asking, hang on a minute, we finished sixth in the table, and you're sacking this manager for someone who's literally never managed a single game in the Premier League before. On paper, that is nuts. That's absolutely nuts. And Poch, you might think he's overrated, but Poch has won competitions with PSG, right? He got into a Champions League final. You know, not being funny anything. Look, I like Maresca as well, but winning the title with the most expensive team in Championship history and only finishing 1 point above Ipswich isn't
To be
an
f-
Which one? 20 million in terms of squad
record
worth?
points total. That would be a different story. If we'd have finished the season with like 107 points, then you'd be like, okay, this guy's,
We didn't even beat what's it called, the 102 point record that we
Yeah.
had in 2013-14.
No,
And that was
army.
and that wasn't, as I think you said it earlier, that wasn't it was good that you mentioned that, because I forgot about that. That wasn't a good a team as we've got now.
Well, I think it was as good a team. It just didn't have the players, if that makes sense. That was a good team. I'm not having that. That was a great team, Morgan, Vasilevsky, Schmeichel, Knockout, Mahrez on the bench, Vardy, Nuge. We'll forget Matty James and Danny Drinkwater that year were sublime.
Yeah, and
Lloyd
with
Dyer.
how they were playing and how they set up, I thought it was great as well. But yeah, that's pretty much. I think that's anything. Ant, is there anything else you want to mention? Because I think we've kind of exhausted. But now that Enzo's gone, at least we've got these a couple of other things, and I think there could be more analysis into core brand and things like that. But I think now I'm seeing it more of the downsides of Enzo as well, and I am kind of. I can't wait till the moment where it was like everything goes wrong. It was going wrong for Celtic, and I was like, oh, been there, haven't I?
My,
With Rodgers.
my thing is, I don't really care how Enzo does at Chelsea.
Same.
Is pretty much like it's irrelevant to me now. It's just what we do. It's like get the right man in and don't piss about with it either. We've got probably, I'd say, 2 weeks to get it sorted.
Fair enough.
Yes, I think the next one, hopefully, if there's one where we actually have made the appointment, I think that's the next big check-in for me. And then it's like, okay, do you know how they sometimes do it on Sky? And it'll be like, okay, inside the inbox of insert manager here, here's the top issues they need to look after. Vardy, will he stay or will he go? Indeedy. But Tao to stay or sold for cash? All that kind of stuff will be on the table.
But it'll be interesting here. But again, hopefully that's you've got again a little bit more insight. We'll get more insight hopefully by the end of the week, because again this needs to get sorted as soon as possible. And are you going live on your channel soon?
Well, this was live on my channel. I'm about to jump over to the final whistle. So, can I put the Jack's link in the chat so everyone jump over to Jack?
Yeah, I was going to put Jack final whistle. If you put the link in the chat, then I'll move it. I can transfer people across. That's more than fine. But yeah, any other thoughts, Anil, before we finish up as well?
No, let's all read Jack and let's see what happens. It's never, drama free with Leicester. So let's see what happens. Get behind the lads and let's see who this new appointment is.
We will figure it out along the way. Again, it's just the link is in the chat, as you can click over. Thanks everybody. Oh, Jan's gone. Like, subscribe, everybody. We'll see again. Hopefully, you all on Jack's channel. So see you in a bit.